What is going on, guys? I'm Consumer Tech Review, and today we're going to be doing the Redragon K530 modding guide. If at any point during the video you want to check out any of the stuff that I used to mod this or the things that I put on this keyboard that did mod it, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's jump into it. All right, start off by grabbing your keycap puller and pulling off all of those keycaps and then discarding them. Now, you can choose to keep these keycaps, but I highly recommend switching out those keycaps for some newer custom ones, as we are going to do today. Keycaps make a massive difference, not only to look, but also feel and sound especially, which is kind of overlooked, especially if you are a beginner. This is a huge thing. Now, after this step, grab a switch puller, which should have come with your K530, and take off all of those switches. Now again, discard these. You can keep these and just hand lube them if you want to, if that's the only upgrade that you want to do. But again, I highly recommend, as we're going to do today, get some new switches. Next, grab a Phillips head screwdriver and unscrew all of the screws in that top metal plate that are connected to your standoffs. This will then allow you to lift up the plate and the PCB, giving you access to the case where the battery lies. Now, the battery will be connected to the PCB via a wire. Go ahead and gently unplug that, and now your plate and PCB is detached from the case. Next, there will be 4 tabs holding the plate and the PCB together. All you have to do is simply press these at an angle and they'll pop right out. After this, you will have a separated PCB and a separated plate. Next, you're gonna grab your plate and take the stabilizers out of the plate by pressing in those little tabs and then kind of gently pulling up, and they should come out very, very easily. Next, grab some paper towels and take one piece of paper towel and lay it down on your desk, because we're gonna disassemble the stabilizers. To disassemble the stabilizers, turn that wire 90 degrees to the housing and stem, and you should hear an audible click. Then pull straight out, and your wire should come out, and then the stem should be able to come right out of the bottom of the housing if the housing is pointed upwards. Gravity should make that thing come out, but you can tap it a little bit to make it come out. Next, grab some more paper towels and you're gonna wipe off those wires. This is just to get the stabilizers ready for re-lubing. So you're just going to be cleaning off all of the grease off of those stabilizer wires. Then you're gonna move to the stem and you're gonna wipe off the left and the right walls, and then you're gonna wipe off the hole. The way that I do this is I take a tweezer and I shove it through the hole to kind of clean off all of the grease that was inside of that hole from the previous stabilizer grease. Now repeat this for the inner walls of the stabilizer housings. Now that all the stabilizer pieces are cleaned, we're gonna move to clipping the stabilizer's stem. Now what this is are 2 protruding spring-like pieces on the bottom of that stem. You'll see that they protrude on the bottom as well as kind of spring out. They're kind of like, if this is the stem, they're kind of like this. That's how they work. However, they make stabilizers sound bad. So you're gonna take micro cutters, which again are linked below to Amazon if you wanna check them out. They're very inexpensive and make this process quite a bit easier. Or you can use scissors. Scissors are a little bit more difficult and take a little bit more time, aren't quite as clean, but they will work if you're only gonna be modding once. So you're gonna clip those 2 pieces. They should be on opposite sides of the stem, and you wanna make sure that you're clipping them so that the bottom is completely flat. If the bottom is not completely flat, you did it wrong and you need to clip some more off. Next, we're going to re-lube the stabilizers. This is not as crazy as it seems. Now for this, we're gonna be using Dielectric Grease, which is linked below to Amazon, and then we're gonna be using Krytox 205G0. Now, I get mine from Divinity, which is a great place to get a bunch of your modding stuff, lube, brushes, switches, basically everything you need to mod a keyboard. Divinity is a fantastic website and is also one of the cheapest places to get Krytox 205 grade 0. Now also, if you do want to get switches, they even have hand lubed switches, which you can pay a premium for, or a bunch of other enthusiast grade switches. You can also get them on the same website with the same order. Now, they are not paying me to say this, and they've never sent me anything free. I've been shopping on Divinity for a very long time, and I finally got affiliated with them, so I make a small commission if you do purchase with my link below. So there will be a Divinity link below, which you can check out switches if you want, or just get the Krytox 205G0. I personally buy all my Krytox from there and a bunch of my switches, so I highly recommend Divinity. Again, it's linked below, but let's get into lubing the switches. Firstly, take a very, very small dab of Krytox 205 grade 0 and apply it to the left and the right inner walls of your housing. Now again, these are very, very small dabs, so do not put too much on. Then you're gonna brush this and smooth it in until it's perfectly even. Again, go light here. Next, you're gonna lube the left and the right sides of your stem using this same technique, 1 small dab on each side and then smooth it in. Do not overlube in the section, go extremely light. If you do think that you won't be able to go light, don't lube the housing at all and just lube the stem. Then you're gonna insert the stem into the housing with the stem's side with 2 holes facing the opening of the housing. That's how you know it's in correctly. Next, we're gonna use dielectric grease for the wires. So take that wire, open your dielectric grease, insert it once into the dielectric grease, and then insert it again past that 90-degree point of your wire. Now here, make sure to get off a lot of the excess. You just want a coating of the wire, and obviously the dielectric grease is much thicker than Krytox 205 grade 0, so it will be a thicker coating, but you don't want globs of it. You just want an even coating along the entirety of the wire, so it does take a little bit of finagling to get that wire perfectly coated. Then insert the wire into the stem and housing at a 90-degree vertical angle. Once it's in, you're gonna turn it sideways and snap it in. Again, you should hear an audible snap here. It will take a little bit of force to press that in to get it snapped in, but once that's done, repeat the entire process, lubing the housing, the stem, and then the wires, and do all of that for all of your stabilizers. It really doesn't take that much time once you get into a rhythm. Okay, congrats. These stabilizers are lubed now. Okay, now taking these and snapping them back into the plate shows us that these are pretty loose, and that's not gonna work here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some medical tape. Again, link below if you want to pick some up. Although most of you will probably already have this in your house. You're gonna cut very small pieces like I'm doing here, and then you're gonna put them on the bottom and the sides of each of these stabilizers. Although depending on the direction, it might be the top or the bottom. This is basically just going to increase the resistance when your stabilizers are snapped in there, that they won't move around and wiggle as much. Once you've done all that, all you gotta do is snap in your stabilizers just like you took them out. All right, now is dampening time. We're gonna dampen between the plate and the PCB. Now here I'm using a rubber dampener that I got from a previous board that I modded and took that dampener out. Now this is made for a 65% board, so we are gonna have to modify it a little bit. However, if you wanna copy me almost exactly, I do recommend a felt pad that's pre-cut. You can get them on Amazon for like 10 bucks. They'll also be linked below. And I've used those on a ton of different builds and they work great. They also will require substantially less modifying than you'll see me do here. And you'll get a very, very similar sound. Now these dampeners add a lot, especially when you have a primarily plastic constructed tray mounted board. This is kind of a must for me. But again, this totally depends on the sound that you're going for. But if you do want to do something similar to me, I would recommend a dampener. And as you can see here, I'm doing quite a bit of modifying to this dampener. However, one thing to definitely remember is that these standoffs will go through the PCB and sit on that plate. So you do have to make sure, not just to make sure that you have room for screws to go through, but also that thick standoff. So do make sure, look at the back of your PCB and make sure all of those holes are cut out for your standoffs. Next, place the PCB on the now dampened plate. And also to note, if you do want a creamy or marbly build, I do recommend putting some PE foam. All you do is you put a layer of PE foam. This is what your K530 should have come wrapped in from the factory. You can take a layer of this or 2 layers and just lay it on your PCB and the switches will be able to punch through that. That'll give it a really creamy, marbly sound. So if you do want something that's a little bit louder, a little bit more unique and more marbly, that is a little tip. Although I did something a little bit different this time, and you're gonna see what it is, because it's kind of cool. Okay, but now it's time for switches. Now your choices here are totally gonna depend on what version of the K530 you have, whether that's the K530 Pro, which is the newest version, or the older, just K530 non-Pro version. Now the main difference here is that the Pro version is fully hot swappable with 3 and 5 pin switches, where the K530 is only hot swappable without Temu switches, which some other switches will fit into, but again, those are only 3-pin. Not all 3-pin switches will fit into the original K530 without Temu hot swap sockets. Now, if that just blew your mind, let me explain it really quick. If you have the K530 Pro like me, you can use any switches you want. If you have the K530 non-Pro, I do recommend Akko switches. Those are really the only switch that I really recommend overall. They are very budget friendly. They are very nice compared to Temu, so it'll be a massive upgrade. They do also have quite a bit of pre-lubed variants if you do not want a hand lube, and they work great in those Temu hot swap sockets. So I'll also link below Akko switches. Even though I'm not using them in this video, I've used them in countless boards. But for today, we are gonna be using the Epomaker Flamingos. Now these are a really nice switch overall. They're very smooth, they're factory lubed, but they're actually done quite well. Like the factory lubing job is it's just good. The actuation force is 47 grams. These have dual stage springs. As far as build quality, this has a polycarbonate top housing, a nylon bottom housing, and a palm stem. And that stem is dust proof, which does help a little bit with stem wobble. They have a nice sound and a great feel for the price, especially if you don't want to hand lube your switches. These, again, they have a good factory lube job. That always sounds wrong. Now, as well as that, these are also 5-pin, which is great because the K530 Pro can accept 5-pin switches, and why wouldn't you want 5-pin rather than 3-pin if you can? Definitely recommend these. I also really like the budget guards, which are tactiles, very similar to these, but they're like tactile versions of these, kind of. But these come in at 16 bucks for a pack of 30, so you will need technically 3 packs. However, realistically, since you only need 61 switches, I would recommend just getting 2 packs and then just putting an Altemu like on the Escape key or something like that. Okay, but yeah, go ahead and place all your switches into the board, and look at that. These look kind of similar to Akko's Jelly Pink switches. However, they do have that purple bottom housing, which does look pretty cool. Although, Flamingos aren't purple, are they? Maybe I'm wrong. All right, next set aside your plate and PCB that now has switches in it and grab your case because we're gonna do some case dampening. Now here, there are a million different options. You can use EVA foam, butyl rubber, silicone mold if you want to. You could put dirt in this, it doesn't matter. The case dampening is somewhere you can go crazy, you can do whatever you want. Some people use rug gripper. I use EVA foam. Butyl rubber is a little bit more difficult to work with, but it's super heavy. You can do a bunch of different things here. But today I'm gonna be doing something that's kind of an experiment, but something I've always wanted to do, which is put PE foam rather than between the plate and the PCB, but we're gonna do it in that case. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, I think it turned out really cool. So for this, I'm ripping it up and I'm just shoving it in the case. That's what I kind of wanted. I just wanted to try this, and overall it turned out well. But again, here, if you want to use something like EVA foam, you would just cut it out for the standoffs and then place it in the board. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. Now next, I'm gonna be doing a tape mod. Now again, we're also gonna experiment a little bit here, but if you're used to a tape mod, essentially it's just taking painter's tape and just covering the bottom with as many layers as you want with tape. But don't use packing tape or anything like that. You really wanna use painter's tape to get that more poppy sound. So if you do want a little bit more of a poppy sound, then you wanna use painter's tape. But today, I wanted to try using medical tape. So I actually did the bottom in one layer of medical tape, making sure to not cover those standoff holes. Now for this, I think rather than making it more poppy, it did make it just a little bit more dampened, but I enjoyed doing it. All right, next, reconnect the battery to the bottom of your PCB and set your PCB and plate back into that case, making sure to line up the 2 switches on that left side. Also make sure that you don't put any dampening over those switches or over the placement of the USB Type-C. As you can see here, I tested out before screwing everything down. And then when it is tested, go ahead and screw all of them down. I do like to screw the left side first rather than the right side, just to make sure that those switches do not come out of place as I'm screwing everything down. All right, but now it is keycap time. My favorite part of this whole thing. Now I'm going with drop MT3 profile keycaps. These are definitely more expensive, but they are a taller profile, similar to like SA. Now these profiles are going to be louder. Basically, the higher, the bigger, the taller your keycap profile, the louder it is going to be. And it's definitely going to change the overall acoustics substantially. So if you do want to acquire a board, definitely go for a lower profile than something as giant as MT3 or SA. Now these come in at $120 for a full set, which is a lot of money, but these are some premium thick boys. These are very thick keycaps, which I really enjoy. The printing is super nice. The feeling is really nice. They have a nice texture and they're similar to SA, but the tops of them are very rounded and it almost like hugs your fingertips. Now I've used this profile on another one of my boards that I modded and I really liked it. So that's why we're using it again today. However, if $120 is too expensive for you, although if it's not, they are linked below, drop.com. But if that is too expensive for you, something a little bit more budget friendly would be like, well, no-brainer, Akko's ASA profile keycaps. Those are a no-brainer if you're not super versed on keycaps. They've got a million different colorways. ASA profile doesn't have any interference. They've got a nice sound without being too crazy, too quiet, or too loud. And the quality is still very, very good. Not quite as good as these keycaps, obviously, as you would expect, but it's still very good. They're also PBT rather than ABS, so you won't get any shine over time. The Akko ASA profiles are great for any new keyboard maybe people that are new to modding. So yeah, definitely that. Also linked below. But yes, go ahead and put all of these keycaps on the boards. This is my favorite part. It's so fun. It's so exciting. And the finished product. This thing came out sounding so cool. The PE foam in the case totally shifted the sound. When PE foam is between the plate and the PCB, it sounds great, but this, I mean, you can really hear that the sound from the PE foam is really coming from that case, but you get a really like dampened sound. It's such a cool thing because I can literally hear where the sound is bouncing, how the modding changed the acoustics substantially. I think this came out sounding really, really good. Now, obviously, this is not your classic modded keyboard. You could definitely go for a more classic sound, but this one, I did a lot of experimenting. If you did want to go more classic, take out the PE foam entirely. If you just wanted a nice linear switch keyboard. And the keycaps definitely make this sound louder, but I've modded so many keyboards at this point that I love making these keyboards sound different and kind of experimenting, having fun with it a little bit more. So good. All right, before we get to the sound test before and after, we're gonna have a K530 Pro before modding and then a K530 Pro after modding. But again, if you wanna check out anything that I use to mod this keyboard to make it sound, look, and feel absolutely epic, there's Amazon links below, drop links below, whatever links below, but take a listen to the sound test in 3, 2, 1, take a listen.